that can feel a
Right.
little overwhelming.
Yeah.
So.
All right, well, I think we have hit the top of the hour, so I'm going to take it away with the official introduction. So again, welcome everyone. We always appreciate it so much when you spend time with us. We know that time is your most valuable asset and you're sharing it with us. So thank you as always. As far as our welcome today, I am Elizabeth Donovan. I work here at Get Connected by Galaxy Digital. I am the head of our networking team. So today we get a little bit of an interesting presentation because it's not me chattering on, it's Court. Court McCracken is our creative marketing and outreach team. She is going to be sharing with us more about smart social media for your volunteer program. So her experience comes from working with a variety of organizations through digital communications, creating doable frameworks of simple and sustainable practices with very busy workflows. So I'll say mouthful there, but I love that it's very simple and sustainable. That always stands out to me in what Court talks about. We know your jobs are really busy and challenging, and coordinating all of your efforts involves all sorts of communication to your current support base, your prospective recruits. So we've talked with a lot of volunteer managers here at Get Connected. We work with a best-in-class volunteer management software. So as we work with our volunteer managers and then just others that we're learning from ourselves, they have their challenges with social media. And the question we get over and over is, how do they better use social media as a communication channel? So today, Court is going to share with us some simple strategies that really work. You guys are probably still seeing Nate Barnes on the screen as well. Nate is also part of our Get Connected network team. So he will man the chat box for us and go ahead, ask any question that comes to mind. Nate will interrupt here and there. Nate, please do, if it's something that we can tie right into what Court is talking about.
I've got no problem interrupting.
There we go. All right.
tell.
He proved it right there. Good. He's learned from me. All right. So for interruptions, we will look to Nate Barnes to do that. So if there's something you really want to ask, just throw it in there. We are going to come back together at the end for some Q&A, so hang tight through it. And then just a reminder to everybody, we're going to work together to keep this a really healthy, respectful space. We've got a variety of people. We have people who are brand new to volunteer management, and then we also have those who've been doing this for a long time. So again, if you see something that you're like, oh, I've got experience in this, I'm going to add a little tip or trick, please do. We want to learn from each other, but we also are going to cover a lot of the basics for those newbies so that we can kind of help each other and grow together. So passing it to you, Court. Excited to hear what you have to share today.
All right, I'm gonna finally share my screen, Elizabeth. It's been you all along, so it's a lot of pressure. Hopefully I can do it well. All right, here we go. Let's see. Can everyone see okay? All right. Here we are. So today we're going to talk about smart social media for volunteer programs. Oh my goodness, this is a big topic. And I know that for all of us, we have our organization, we've got to reach out, we've got all of our objectives we need to meet to recruit, retain, and appreciate all of our volunteers. And we really want to get the word out about our program. And we keep hearing over and over again, social media is so important. Social media is so important. Well, what does that mean? You get on there and there's all this stuff, they're scrolling, and it feels like these channels are ever changing. And so I really want to speak to some of the principles that stay really constant, no matter what social media platform you choose to invest your time in, and to make certain that that time is well spent, because we do know that you have a lot of objectives that you need to meet in your day-to-day, and you're very busy. So we want to make sure that that time is efficient and that you're actually going to gain traction and create growth for your program. So here's what we'll cover today: using social media to support the mission of your volunteer program. And we're going to do that by talking about implementing simple and scalable strategies, increasing volunteer engagement through social media, which I know is a big struggle for a lot of organizations, and creating a plan for sustainable social media practices. So how do we not make this take all of our time? How are we not tied to the computer and tied to our phones, just constantly checking? How do we make it sustainable and just really doable? So stay to the end, because I'm going to give you 3 takeaways to get your next month of social media planned for your volunteer program. And here's the topics we're going to specifically discuss to meet those objectives that we talked about just a moment ago. Why is social media even important for your volunteer program? Common barriers for volunteer programs on social media. Common goals for volunteer programs on social media. and how to know where to spend your time on social media, as well as the specific strategies that work sustainably on social media. So why is social media important for volunteer programs? Well, here's the thing. I'm sure that we've all experienced this where you're hanging out with somebody and they're looking down at their phone and they have checked an app. They're on a social media app. So the truth is that globally, 4.46 billion people are on social media. And that means that 9 out of 10 people who have access to the internet are also using social media. The global average for time spent on social media per day is 147 minutes. And that might be surprising if you're not really into social media, or if you're really into it and you might spend a lot more time there. That average sort of differs by country. I think in the United States, it's about 127 minutes, which actually I thought would be a little higher. But people are hanging out on the internet together and they're sharing things. And you can find some really fascinating statistics on pewresearch.org. And I'll include that in the follow-up resources for this presentation. So with stats like that, it's clear probably many of your volunteers are on social media, the volunteers you already have, and potential volunteer recruits are probably spending time on social media daily. So social media is just one portion of your volunteer program's digital communication strategy. So that sounds digital communication strategy, unless you're a communications nerd like me, like you might not like those words. But here's the thing, if you're sending emails, you have a digital communication strategy. If you're sending emails to your volunteer recruits or your potential volunteers who have registered, but they haven't signed up for an opportunity yet, you've got you're digitally communicating with people. So what I think is really important to note is that social media should not be the place that you put all of your digital strategy in, because it can be a time, a real time, like drawing on your time and take a lot of time, but it is a way to get out in the digital world and network. And ultimately, you really do want to have some real estate on the internet that is yours, just for your program or your organization, like a volunteer site. Some people have a website or volunteer management software where you can really kind of capture those recruits and get their emails so that you can have a more close relationship with them. So I really sort of visualize social media is just like if I was going to a volunteer fair and there were just tables everywhere of different organizations that I could talk to. And maybe I pick up a pamphlet here and there and have a nice interaction with someone. Well, ultimately, that person at that table is going to want to capture my information so that we can have a better relationship and build that relationship. And perhaps then I will become a volunteer with them. So social media is just a digital way of attending a volunteer fair. And the nice thing about it is you don't have to wait. It's just right there. But it's really important to know what am I doing with this engagement? So a lot of people spend all their time on social and they don't ever take that next step of making sure that they're sending people to their website and getting their email and building that relationship. So we want to think of social as a very important way of networking consistently. So common challenges or barriers to using social media: time. I think that's the biggest one for all of us. And if you don't have a staff member who's like just all about the communications and they're on social all the time can be the greatest barrier. Number two, just confusion about where to focus and trying maybe to do too many platforms at one time. Like, oh, I need to be on all the platforms all at once. And maybe then just watering down your efforts. And then engagement, getting your support base involved in your social media efforts. Like it feels like, oh, I post and no one likes it, no one shares. Like, is this doing anything? Or I'm just like putting this stuff out into the void of the internet, right? Or really specifically just knowing what to post, like how to figure out what to share on social media can be a task in and of itself. So I know a lot of folks, like they'll pull their phone up and go, I know I need to post something today for my program. And then they're like scrolling through pictures and they're just like very ad hoc, like, I need to do this. I need to get it done. And that can be just like a regular stressor. So we want to alleviate that. So here are some common goals when choosing to use social media for your volunteer program. It's important to be as specific as possible about what it is you're hoping to achieve. So here are some common goals for volunteer programs. You may choose to engage your current support base. That might be your primary objective on social media, is to just keep these folks energized and coming back. You may want to increase exposure to new audiences. So finding new people in the community, new supporters, or you may want to keep your community informed about what it is that your organization or your program is doing, which is a great objective as well. You may want to increase awareness about your specific cause. I can tell you, I follow a lot of organizations on social media just because I felt educated about their cause or passionate about their cause, and I might not be nearby to volunteer, but if I follow them, every once in a while, maybe I'll donate, a few dollars here and there. You may want to increase new volunteer registration. So that's going to be a really specific message that you send to people that you've been communicating with through your social media outreach. And you may want to increase signups for very specific programs or needs. So how do you know where to spend time on social media? I strongly recommend when I work with organizations to really focus on one social channel and really master it before expanding to other social channels. I see folks trying to go around and post on a lot of different places, and I'm like, please don't forget your website. Please don't forget your email, and really take one channel and just get really good at that, because each channel has their own kind of flavor and their own language, their own way of communicating and doing things. So my best piece of advice is to conduct a volunteer survey. Find out where supporters that you already have are spending time on the internet. If you will start to see themes. I've noticed in certain organizations I've worked with, like the majority of their volunteers or their followers are already on Instagram. And so it makes more sense for them to invest their time on Instagram, because that's where like the people who are already interested in what they're doing are hanging out. And there's probably more people who are similar to them on that channel as well. And then I do recommend adding that as a registration, like checkbox or question. Like when you're taking in new volunteers, you just want to gather this information and say, is our volunteer base changing? Are we getting new insights into where we can spend time on social? So really just asking people is my best piece of advice, because that will really give you that insight about where's going to be wise for you to invest and spend your precious time. Okay, so then we've got
something there, Court, so you can just catch your breath. I feel like that's always helpful for me. That's why Court interrupts so I can breathe. I was thinking back to just old school. We talked about kind of old school versus new school, and there's a principle I remember back in just our advertising and marketing, and it was a really good visual of that pouring a pitcher of water into a glass. And if you think about that, kind of the old adage of you're spraying and praying, you're hoping something you do works. What Court was just talking about is so important, because if you think of each of your glasses as what she's about to talk about for these different types, and you're pouring to fill that glass, until everybody in the LinkedIn glass knows who you are and you've really overutilized to the point that you're established there and you've got your practices, everything's living there, you don't want to start pouring into another glass, because you've only got you've only got your pitcher, and you can only pour that amount into so many glasses, and tiny little amounts in each glass is that old spray and pray. Whereas if you can really, as you said, Court, do that survey where you're finding out these are the one that's just critical. I'm going to invest and pour until that cup runneth over. And when it does, then I can be like, all right, now I've got that one covered. I'm ready to move on to a second one, versus trying to do a little bit of everything. I think that's such a good key point just for everyone to remember. And that visual stuck with me through the years. I was like, it feels so good to dabble in it all, but no one in that glass really knows who you are, because you didn't take the time to keep pouring until they fully got it.
That's a really great point, Elizabeth. And I think too, we'll get into that as we talk about planning strategy for social media, but it does take a time investment, and consistency is best. And so, it can be really personally draining. I spend a lot of time on platforms, and it can be really personally draining to try to be everywhere and try to be all things. And I've noticed sort of trends with different organizations that I work with that, again, it's like the majority of their supporters are on Facebook with a side of Instagram, or certain organizations, depending upon the types of volunteers and supporters they have, are solely on LinkedIn. They're not spending time on any of these other platforms. So I do think it's really important to pay attention to that and to just ask. You'll see themes crop up, which is always really surprising to me. And then when you are choosing, you finally do choose, you really want to lean into the unique language of each platform, or as I call them, their strengths. They all are a little bit different. So Facebook's really great for events and pulling together, a one-time event, sharing photos coupled with maybe some longer form writing. LinkedIn is really strong for professional networking and great for high quality group interactions. So if you're trying to recruit some amazing, volunteers on there, I think you might have some luck with that. As well as sharing articles that are more in depth and in events. There is also a LinkedIn specifically for nonprofits where nonprofit professionals can network with each other. So not so much volunteer focus, but just, sharing with each other. Instagram, which I sort of specialize a little more in, is well known for photos, videos, Reels, Reels is their version of kind of TikTok, and stories, very focused on authentic person-to-person interaction and very aesthetic visuals. Twitter, short form writing, really used by a lot of people for activism and quick calls to action. And TikTok is storytelling, music, sound bites. They also have a nonprofit sort of focus with TikTok for Good. So there are a lot of people on there using that. And Nate, do I have any questions or?
Yeah, I was gonna chime in. So good timing. Good question from Matt. Says, do you recommend being straightforward with the benefits of volunteering when you are targeting a corporation? So for example, you get recognition in the media, get your name out there, help a cause, basically not focusing so much on personal mission of the nonprofit, but more so how it benefits the corporation.
I think that's one type of share for sure that you can use. And we'll talk about sort of figuring out those different, because you're not going to post to the same person every time. You might be posting to different groups of people, but I think it's great to share anything that you have permission to share about the work that you're doing. And it makes sense to who you're trying to talk to. Then I think, why not? I'm sure that the corporation too wouldn't mind being tagged in something like that as well. They tend to enjoy things like that. So I really think it's just understanding what it is you're trying to accomplish with the post and asking yourself, do I have 100% permission to share this? That's always important. And what am I trying to accomplish? Well, you might just want to inspire people, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but inspiring other corporations to get in, or inspiring employees to ask their bosses, why aren't we volunteering in the community? I care about stuff, so you never know who's going to see what you post, and maybe it's not directly applicable to them, but it could be applicable to somebody they know. I share things with people all the time. I'm a big sharer of posts, because if I see something that I'm like, oh, I know somebody who needs this opportunity, I'll send it right their way.
Court, we got one question about age groups going into the different ones. And I know we chatted about this a little bit when you and I were talking earlier. For myself, like when I look at this, I use Facebook. I dabble in LinkedIn because Court makes me, but there's those top two, that's it. So Court, posing that question of what age groups, I think the one advice I'll tag in there is get the face of the person that in your mind is on Facebook. Get the face of that if you're working Facebook and TikTok. Who's my person on TikTok? If Nate's your TikTok and Elizabeth's your Facebook, when you're posting to that person. So you're thinking about what's going to catch their eye, what are they like, what are they interested in? So you're almost writing to a human. That's so much easier than writing to Facebook or writing to Instagram. So I would ask you to personify those channels as well. But Court, age-wise, do you see any trends there?
There's absolutely a trend there. There's absolutely demographic trends across all of these platforms. And I'm going to send that in some follow-up resource for you to take more time to dive into from Pew Research and also Sprout Social. They've done a lot of studies. It's very easy to know exactly who is on these platforms because we give them our information when we create our profiles, right? So they know how old we are, they know where we are, and they know the things that we eat for lunch if we share that. So, the thing is that's why I feel like, okay, understanding the platforms, understanding who's my current volunteer base. And then if you have a goal of expanding and recruiting in maybe like Gen Z, like I need to get some Gen Z volunteers and start building my younger support base because that's very important for sustainability. Then you know that you're going somewhere like going to TikTok where Gen Z is hanging out. And really you're trying to do something new. Nobody there knows you yet. It's going to take time. And I will talk about this a little bit later, but volunteer power, recruit somebody that uses that platform and is very adept and say, we're going to share our mission. We're going to share our program on this platform and I need you. Can you volunteer with me in this way? Because I work with an equine nonprofit in my free time. And I can tell you that I learn a lot about the younger generation's social habits when I see some of the kids out at the farm and they're doing TikTok videos, and I'll ask them questions about it because I'm curious, like, where are you all hanging out online? So really, doing that survey, they'll tell you where your current people are, doing some research through pewresearch.org, and I'll share all of those links post webinar. But just saying, okay, if I know the people who follow me are here, I know I'm going to get some engagement. I'm probably going to be able to expand my audience. But if I'm going somewhere where nobody knows who we are, then that's going to take a little bit more time. But it could be an investment that pays off as far as like your communication strategy and expanding your volunteer base. So that's a great question. I get that a lot, actually. So here it is. Here's what it works. This is what social media managers talk about all the time. Content, we love content, and consistency. The algorithms love consistency. So when using social media in collaboration with a well-organized volunteer site, so you have your own internet real estate where you're sending people back to, you don't want them to only stay on social. You want to deepen that relationship. And your regular volunteer e-newsletter, which we recommend to all of our network here at Get Connected. It's a powerful tool to reinforce your message and help you make a greater impact. Okay, so content and consistency. If this is your one takeaway, remember it, take it with you. Okay, so how are you showing up? A lot of people ask questions about the algorithm. The algorithms are always changing. Here's the thing, we don't control the algorithms at all. That's why it's important to have your own volunteer site. But if you are just posting messages, I've got the person with the megaphone here, just like posting a message and leaving the social media platform, you're probably not seeing the engagement you'd hope for. So social media really isn't a billboard. It's designed for people to human, people to interact with each other. So I've talked with folks who said, well, I spent all these hours like designing these really beautiful graphics, and then I posted it and nobody liked it. No one even saw it. I checked my impressions, like it wasn't visible. But if you took an hour that you were spending doing these graphics, and instead you just, took 10 minutes posting a thoughtful photo with real description, and then you spent the rest of that time kind of liking and sharing and communicating with other people and then left, you're going to see more engagement because it is a place to engage. It is a place to build relationships. It's really, the algorithm rewards people being people on social media. It's social. It wasn't really initially designed to be used by businesses and organizations, although now it really is, but they reward you for acting like a person on there. So you want to treat it more like just like you would at a networking event, like you're going to shake hands, you're going to say hi to people. That's going through and following other people that are your followers and liking their posts. That is going to increase your visibility. And that's also like a way that you build relationships and build value. So I would say if you just share an ad hoc photo with like a short, thoughtful caption, and then spend a couple minutes like engaging with other folks on there, you're going to see more traction. So, okay, content. Everyone's like, hey, here's my best social media tip. Make really great content. And you're like, great, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to make great content? That can be really frustrating. So there are 3 types of content that you can focus on to share on social. And I think if, again, this is the only thing you take away, I think this could be really valuable because it really gives you a lens through which to look at what it is you're thoughtfully posting. Okay, so educate, inspire, and invite. Okay, educational social media posts focus on sharing your mission and really just educating people. Inspirational focus on more on sharing transformation and really those storytelling sort of things. And invite, that's where you give your like call to action. Okay, so let's just talk about that a little bit more. So creating social posts that educate. Never, ever, ever underestimate or take for granted just stating the facts. I can't tell you how many things I don't know about, and I'm constantly learning, and I'm refreshed when people take the time in their posts to educate me on their cause, because I don't have the time to be an expert on everything, but I do care about my community. So sometimes people truly just don't know these details about like what your program is named, why it was founded, what cause it addresses. And just a short post that explains that can be extremely powerful, especially as over time, people will be exposed to it more and more. They'll be slowly educated. So you don't have to do all of everything about your organization in one post, just one fact at a time. And that allows people to really absorb and start to get it. And what I'm going to give you after this webinar, I'll send out with the follow-up recording, you'll get a planning guide that's going to have examples of all different kinds of educational posts that will help you plan for social media. And this information, educational information, you want to keep it rotating. You don't want to stop educating people about your program. You don't want to say it just once a year. And I think that this is something I also see in a lot of organizations is we're worried and we don't want to bother people, or we think I said that last week. Well, guess what? Only some people that follow you on social saw that last week. It's okay to say it again. You know, if your organization, your program addresses, food insecurity, you should be talking about that every single week. And sometimes we feel like almost too much pressure to be like highly creative with our posts, but really never underestimate just saying the same thing, like a heartbeat, kind of a pulse underneath your communication. Like, we're here, we're doing this. We're here, we're doing this, right? So that's what educational posts are all about.
Court, we talked a little bit about how some media almost feels like a stream. I think I was talking about Slack, which is just an internal communication, but it's like a stream of content. And there's these moments where I'm like, why did you not know that? And I'll pick on Nate. Nate, why did you not turn in the assignment? It's like, I didn't even see it, because it's this continuous stream that's just flowing by. And when you think about like how many times it takes it in that stream to actually catch the eye, start to sink in, be to the point where then the person gets the message and can relay it to someone else on your behalf, like that's a lot of repetition. And I think that just to reinforce your point, we talk about 3s in media and 3s in marketing, but you have to say something probably 20 to 50 times to make sure everybody in that audience heard it 3 times. So when you're sick of it, you're about ready to be at the point where you probably started to have some traction.
Right, exactly. And that's why I think making these posts really simple and just sharing one thing at a time. Don't overcomplicate it. Just one thing at a time. Like a lot of times I'll work with folks and we'll take one post and they're like, okay, this is my post. And it's all this text and they're telling all these different things. And it's like, okay, you have 5 posts in here. Now we just need to break the text up and go find 4 other photos to go with this, because it does. And I can tell you for folks that work in digital communications, like 100% of the time, the amount of exposures that people needed to really get a message increased during the pandemic, because everything went online and everybody was really busy going online. And you may have experienced some of that too. The amount of communication you were doing digitally just wasn't having the same effect. And so increasing that made a lot more sense to people. And so I think a lot of times I like to say 27. I think it was a statistic I heard somewhere, but there is a certain amount of exposures that it takes for somebody to learn and receive a message and then take action. And it's more than you think. So never tire of saying something simple. It's kind of like somebody who really knows they're like, I'm Court McCracken and I work for Get Connected by Galaxy Digital. I say it over and over and over again. It's kind of like that. So it's okay to say, I work at the Equine nonprofit and I do this and I do that. And to say it every week, that's fine. It's fine for people to hear that from you. In fact, they'll be glad that you reminded them. If they care about your organization and your cause, they'll be grateful. They'll see your post as they're scrolling and they'll say, oh, I'm glad I saw this because I meant to do something about it 2 weeks ago. Right. So never feel bad about sharing your message on social media. That's what it's there for. So inspire. We talked about educate and we talked about inspire. Inspire is really more where you can, especially if you're targeting volunteers or prospective volunteers, you want to talk about the volunteer experience. Share stories that help connect your volunteer base or prospective volunteers to your program. And so keep your key objectives in mind. Yes, recruitment, retention, engagement when you're sharing these stories, but really what people care about is people and transformation. And so, for me, I know that when I've shared some of my stories of volunteering, other folks have been inspired to say, well, I want to go see what that organization's up to. And I know that I've experienced the same thing there. I've heard inspiring stories of other people. And a lot of times those can be the most powerfully educational because transformation makes a lot of sense to us when we're hearing about it from another person. So this is kind of your fun storytelling sort of experience. All right. And then invite. This is where you really focus on, this is the nuts and the bolts, right? Okay, we need people to show up. So you want to balance how much you're educating and inspiring and then inviting with your audience on social. So you can just outline the specifics of becoming a volunteer. Like, hey, did you know that we have, volunteers doing this weekly? You can learn more here. So asking someone to learn more, that's an invitation to send them to your volunteer website or your volunteer landing page or your management software, wherever you have your opportunities. You can talk about speak to different phases of the volunteer life cycle, like people who need to come to an orientation or a training, or actually inviting people to specific opportunities. And these are usually the posts that we focus the most on is the invite ones because they're the most pressing to us. But if you do the other things as well consistently, you'll start to see the invite gain some traction. Okay, so people do need to be educated and inspired a lot of times before they'll take invitation level action. And that's something to keep in mind.
The images are really cool with invitation too. And we may talk more about this one on here. So I'll actually lay it into this one so you don't have to go backwards. But like the picture here that it's showing, there was a piece that I did a couple of weeks back with the Parks and Rec. And we were talking about with some of the state park volunteer recruitment programs. Through 3 images up. And this is very relevant in my mind because it's Easter. So you think about Easter, you think about the stuffing of the eggs. There was one slide that just showed, 2,000 eggs basically waiting to be stuffed. There was another picture that showed all those eggs placed in really fun places in the parks and the trees and in the grass. And then there was a third, which was like the mess of children descending upon the chocolate. So it was this moment of like, which of these 3 photos appealed to you? And I was live in this presentation. And so, we had hands raised where very few of them actually wanted to deal with those kids. As a mother, I understand. But they had a lot of them liked the egg stuffing. A lot of them liked the egg hunting or placing. But that moment of like, they didn't all like the same thing. And to me, stuffing those eggs, that looked horrendous. I would not want to do that. But my youngest daughter loves organizing things. She would love that. So thinking about that same invite to Court's part, how much repetition can you put behind it? The person who likes the idea of stuffing the eggs, same post description, the person who wants to come out and help hide the eggs, you're leading them into that, especially in volunteer management, you're leading into that place and get connected where they can respond to stuff the eggs or respond because they click the link right into where they're going to on your website, sign up to do something else. So you're able to be very intentional is, what I like to do, what Nate likes to do, what Court likes to do. We're all different. So thinking about how my one message needs to differ, even just a photo can attract a whole different audience, let alone going into a different medium.
Yes, absolutely. I love that example because it really does speak to the getting specific and knowing who it is you're trying to talk to when you share these posts. So photos and videos of people are really something that can't miss on social media. Like I always encourage people to lean into that more. It's designed to be social and shareable, so it doesn't have to look like a professional pamphlet. Like it really doesn't. Just people to people is really best. Keep your text really simple, clear, well-spaced, and straightforward. You want to ask an engaging question for attention at the beginning and then follow up with just your answers. And there's no need to overthink it. A lot of times I really do see more overwriting, writing really long, and you really just want to avoid, you don't want a digital wall of just like a text, because if there's no space there and it's on someone's on their phone, it's a tiny screen, they're just going to scroll right past it because it feels like too much. It's like a digital wall that they can't overcome. So keep things like light, spaced out, short, and let people know what's really going on. So, okay, call to action, that's at the very end. Like I said, want to learn more. Our upcoming new volunteer information session is next Thursday. So that's an invitation, right? And you always want to have the link for when somebody is going from your social media post to your profile, and then being able to click and head to your volunteer real estate on the internet, like a volunteer website or your sign up form. So that is very important, because again, staying on social is great for social. They love us to stay there and spend all of our time there. But ultimately for your program, you've got to have people showing up and giving hours. Like that's what it's about. You can't just hang out on social media all the time and be nice and friendly. Like ultimately at some point, folks have to take action. And so you have to give them that opportunity regularly. So hashtags. I know we had a chat about that the other day, Elizabeth. Remember?
Those are pound signs. And I did ask you, yes, you're going to tell us all about hashtags. I know they're very important, but this is the part where I'd say never overestimate your audience. I'm losing all credibility from my knowledge for future sessions, but I've never used one. I've never had to, because I've never been in your role on a social media marketer, but I've also just never used one, period. So the idea of filtering and having tags so that people can use it and find it and search for it makes perfect sense to me. Never done it. So there's that fear factor of I've never done this. So I think I lean into what you said. How do you find a volunteer? How do you find someone on your staff? It's like, Court, you know how to use these hashtags. Will you walk me through it once so that I can suddenly be powerful and it clicks?
Yeah,
Maybe you should do that with me. We could maybe do that next week.
Hashtags on social media are simply creating a hyperlink to searchability. So like you could say, you know, Galaxy Digital, we're located here in Asheville, North Carolina. So if I click on a hashtag Asheville, I'm going to see everybody that hashtagged Asheville on that social platform, probably most recently. And so what you want to think about, I see a lot of people overusing hashtags and tagging for things that I'm like, do you really want someone who follows this hashtag to find your organization? Like if you need local people, you want to be hashtagging locally. And if you are an organization that, you know, is global or national, you know, wherever you may be, then, you know, you do want to consider like, how am I hashtagging to target like different areas of what are people really searching for, right? So maybe it's virtual volunteerism, hashtag virtual volunteerism. Okay, I can take people from anywhere. But ultimately, like if you're hashtagging something like do good, I mean, that's a really fun hashtag. It gives me the warm fuzzies. You might get discovered there, but if you're looking for local volunteers, you might not be discovered by people who you really need. So I try to be really specific, and I try not to overuse hashtags. Some people are like, you have to put 16 to 30 in every post. I don't think that's true. I think if you're just really thoughtful with them and you find the ones that work, especially if you're a local organization, then that's all you need. Don't overthink them. And then custom, I'm also going to send you a follow-up resource about that. So custom hashtags are something that take time and traction to gain support. And that's probably only going to be followed by people who are already your supporters. Like people aren't going to follow hashtag Get Connected Volunteer unless they're already familiar with the organization, you know? So you've got to just really know if you want to put the energy and drive and effort into, you know, getting a custom hashtag going, it's just going to take time and it's going to be from your support base. You're probably not going to find new people through that. Okay, here we go. Rubber meets the road, a calendar. This is what you really want to know, right? How often do I really need to post on these platforms? So I see a lot of times with organizations that I've worked with in the past, they go through this thing where there's no posting for months and then 20 posts in a short amount of time because they're like, oh, we need to do this again. And I empathize with that. I totally understand it. I have been there and I have learned. So really it's best to, again, content and consistency. We just talked about content, educate, inspire, invite. And now we're talking about consistency. If you can show up 2 to 3 times a week and not stop doing that, that's going to be way better than not showing up for months and then posting 20 things all in one weekend because you had a big event. So be mindful when you look at this example, and again, I'll send it to you in the follow-up. You know, I've got, here's an educate post, here's a type of inspire post, here's, you know, invite posts, you know, inviting people to my volunteer email list. So you want to keep a rotation of these things going and replicate them. So actually I've provided you with a brainstorming planning guide and this calendar that you'll be able to create 5 weeks of social media posts. Okay, here's the tools and the practices to actually get it done. This is the tough part, right? So where do I have the time to implement this content and consistency, educate, inspire, invite, and then my calendar? Where do I have the time to do it? So I really recommend using some free online tools and volunteer power to help plan and manage your social media efforts for your volunteer program. So you want to consider, do I have a photo and video storage plan? Am I using a common Google Drive where just everyone can drop photos in, we can all share them, and then the volunteer who shows up once a week to schedule the post can, you know, pull them out of this drive, right? You might also want to create a Google sheet where people can write like sort of ideas for posts. Like just kind of sit and brainstorm some of those for a few minutes. That's a great activity for a volunteer. I love Canva. It's a great free tool for layout and designs. They have templates in there that are formatted specifically for each social platform. So you won't get the wonky picture situation where you upload the picture and it doesn't fit quite into the social platform and they like crop it a little funny. So I love Canva for that. And then I really love link in bio or Linktree to add additional links specifically for Instagram profiles. But this is true of a lot of social platforms, is that they only allow you one link. So a lot of people, they do put, you know, a sign up form there or their volunteer site there. But what you can do, especially if you're somebody who uses a platform that's similar to ours or our platform, Get Connected, you have specific links for every volunteer sign up opportunity. And like you could in a Linktree drop all of that in. And then Linktree gives you a single link that you then put into your profile. So when someone clicks on it, they'll see all the things that are most important, like here's our volunteer site, here's our newsletter sign up, and here's our top 3 volunteer opportunities to sign up for. Oh, how easy, it's all right there. And it takes you to the volunteer site and you can register and become a volunteer. And there's also Later, which is one of my personal favorites for scheduling posts in advance. They do have a free version that affords you 12 free posts a month, which if you're doing my recommended 2 to 3 posts a week, you'll be covered. And there's other tools as well, like Hootsuite, Edgar, and it really depends on your organization and how much you need to post, how many opportunities you have, and to what scale you're doing it, and how many platforms you're on simultaneously. So I really do recommend engaging a volunteer. Number one, especially if you are trying to do platforms that you're not familiar with, it's great. There's probably somebody already in your volunteer base who's spending a lot of time on Facebook and they love it and they can't wait to do it more. And it's an easy way to have micro volunteerism or virtual volunteerism as well. One of the things that I recommend is that if you're going to have a volunteer help you with this, have them brainstorm, design, write, schedule, and then you just sign into that social media scheduling tool, like say you're using Later, and you can review everything that they've put in there before it goes out. And then you can make changes and edits. It will take you just a few minutes and then it's done. And I did this with one organization, myself and another person. We scheduled a month of content and we did it in advance. Like it was, I think it was like, it wasn't going to start. The content wasn't going to start for like 2 more weeks. So we got in, we scheduled it, me and this other person. And then the director was like, okay, so she logged in, read through everything, changed a word or two, and was just like, it's good to go. So it really is great. And then you could even choose to have volunteers maintain and create engagement on social for you as well. Okay.
Court, I'm going to interrupt you.
Sure.
We have a question from Kelly. It's a good one, and definitely a situation I've even been in before. So not at Galaxy Digital, but she says, so where we run into issues is that we have so many different areas of the business wanting to post on their various platforms. Our social team wants to be conscious of the community living with the disease, so the issues that are surrounding in the community. So often are told we can't post. So we struggle being seen. What do you recommend in this situation? She also adds, our social team is posting, but each group, like their volunteer team, and are often told we can't due to other priorities. So any recommendations in that scenario?
This is a challenge that a lot of larger organizations have, or volunteer programs have within an organization, right? Because maybe your volunteer program is just one part of a larger organization that has a lot of different priorities. And they have a communications team, and that communications team is, really there. This is like, here's your priorities, and sorry, like the volunteer program, like you can have one post a month. So at that point, that can be a real roadblock. I think like some of the creative ideas I would have is ask, is there a way that my volunteer program can have their own social presence? Can we pick a platform? Because I see that happening actually in a lot of larger organizations where, especially if you look at something like, it's a statewide organization or a national organization, it makes more sense that there would be like local volunteer sort of offshoots of that. And then they would have their own social because they would be the ones communicating with a very specific group of people, right? So if you're working with, a sensitive or vulnerable population, you need to be really considerate of that. And I understand that pressure, absolutely. But I think talking to the people that you want to recruit and engage as volunteers might be a different group of people than who the larger organization is using their social media to talk to. So I would maybe try and, have that conversation potentially about, can my program do its own thing, because we're trying to get a different group of people. Like we don't even want to communicate with the exact same, like maybe it's a subcategory of that larger, body of people. You might be talking to like 5 or 10% of the people that the larger organization is talking to. So I see that happening a lot, that the volunteer program would have their own sort of way of having an account on social. I hope that that's helpful. I know that that's a real challenge, especially for larger organizations that already have a communications team, and you might not be getting the airtime that you need for your program. So does that answer your question, Kelly?
And yes, but I think also, Court, what you're about to tie into is really interesting, because what you just said, if you do the poll, you may find that your volunteers are not on that platform that the content and marketing team is focused on not overutilizing. So, or, getting too clogged up with too many messages. So that I'll let you take your number one point, but I think that might actually help, because to your point, if it's a subset and they're on a different type of social media, you may have more room to maneuver than you realize.
You could be surprised. And that's what's really fun about this, is that when you ask people, you might be surprised at who's actually on TikTok. So I definitely do recommend polling your current volunteers. That would be your number one takeaway, is just ask, where are the people who are your supporters for your volunteer program? Not necessarily the organization as a whole, but for your volunteers, where are they hanging out on social? and get that question on your volunteer registration form. That's very easy to add. And that will help you because perhaps, the organization as a whole is spending time on Facebook, but your specific volunteers are on Instagram. So it would make more sense for you to do something a little different. So I hope that was helpful for you specifically, Kelly, and for others as well. And the next takeaway is evaluate your calendar and brainstorm. Like, this is where you really want to look at the scope of your program and opportunities and kind of brainstorm your communications flow. Like, okay, if we're going to be sending out a newsletter that talks about, the big park cleanup, then I probably want to be doing social posts like leading up to that as well. You really want those things to be concurrent, and you want them to make as much sense. These digital pieces of communication going out into the world, you want them to make as much sense as a conversation you'd have with somebody, just telling them what's coming up. Think about it like that, and it takes a lot of pressure off. And then your third takeaway is create and schedule. Use those free tools that I talked about. And I'm also going to send in the follow-up to begin working with a volunteer to get these posts on the calendar, because when you can actually schedule them a month in advance, it's just not going to be as stressful for you. And that's what we want to do. We want to save time. We want to streamline, and we want to make it a little easier to engage with the folks that you need to engage with. And your bonus take action. This is where you share with your volunteer base in your volunteer newsletter on your volunteer site. Okay, you want to let people know I'm going to be hanging out on LinkedIn or Instagram, wherever it is. Tell them, hey, follow us there, engage with us there. Every time you like, comment, save, or share a post, it's actually a form of micro volunteerism, because you're helping get the word out just like you would be if you were handing out pamphlets for us. Okay. And then if you want to take that bonus take action and kind of kick it up to another level, you could even create a digital ambassador program where maybe you have, 5 to 10 volunteers who just really love your program and they love what you're doing. And they always are making certain to just be, sort of like boost those posts with their power on social, which is liking and sharing and saving and sending things to other people. So that's a really great form of micro volunteerism that can go a long way for helping you spread your message, spread your mission, and make a greater impact. So I hope that has been helpful for you. That is all I have to share. I think we have a couple of minutes here, about 8 minutes. We can take questions, but I do want to say thank you. Of course, you can follow us at Galaxy Digital Volunteer Management on LinkedIn, and you can email us as well or find us at galaxydigital.com. But Nate, are there any questions? Elizabeth, any questions I can answer?
I see what you did there, Court.
Yeah, that was nice. Nate, I'm going to kick it to you,
Go ahead.
but I'm going to start by saying, like, the one thing that I think, Court, you and I talked about is this is an incredible amount of activity and thought and planning. Just remember where they land. You don't know who they are yet unless you capture them. So remember that whether it's your website, your form, volunteer management, with the volunteer management, get connected. You want to plan to also, if your ambassadors and everybody out there is getting the word out or a thank you after the event, plan how you're going to capture the people that click through that say, missed it this time, sign up here for next time, so that you're getting that email, you're getting that person's name, so you're recruiting for the future because they really followed it, and maybe they were late to the ball game, but they showed up and you don't know they're there unless you capture their information. So I think don't hesitate to ask more questions about this, and we'll turn it over for that. But I think that's the part Court really subtly is weaving through here, and I want to make sure we say it loud and clear. All of this, if you don't capture them with something behind the scenes where they land and sign up, land and opt in, land and raise their hand for a future response in that volunteer management software, you don't know they were there. And the next great marketer out there distracted them next week. So you've got to make sure that you capture them when you get them, so that then your newsletter and everything else you're doing can hold their attention and keep building them toward future engagement. So that was just the one point. I think you said it so powerfully, and I don't want to leave us behind without saying, do all of this, but keep tying it back, tying it back, tying it back. Nate, anything else that you want to bring up from the group?
Yeah, we've got a couple. First, kind of relating to that last point, Elizabeth, a question from Amber. Do you have any recommendations on how we write up the social media volunteer opportunity? Which I think initially my answer real quick before I pass it over to Court would be to utilize that kind of information grabbing and capturing system to actually write up the opportunity and collect all that information, but use social media to promote or market the opportunity. But on how to do that, I'll turn that over to you, Court.
Yeah, and let me just ask a clarifying question. Do you mean, how do you write up a volunteer opportunity description as you're trying to specifically recruit someone to help you with your social media? Is that what you mean as well? Amy?
Yes, the description. says
Okay,
that.
so I'm going to send a resource out. I've got so many resources for you that that you will see, and one of them is writing amazing volunteer opportunity descriptions. But some of the things that I would include would be very similar to really looking just for someone who likes social media, because people that like it spend a lot of time on there, and you might even be able to potentially recruit someone who has maybe some social media industry knowledge, like somebody with marketing skills, who knows how to do that. That's a really great virtual volunteerism opportunity, because they may or may not need to be present for everything. Maybe they come and capture some photos, but really writing up and doing the scheduling and the planning, it's a lot of those skills. And I would name the specific platforms in the call out, because somebody who's really good at Facebook may or may not really understand what's happening on LinkedIn. So I would say these are the platforms we're focusing on. We're looking at for someone to support our volunteer program through volunteerism that is specifically social media engagement and marketing. Yeah. I mean, you might
Thanks,
start with
everybody who
someone
has
who
to
just
jump
really
here.
likes it. What's that?
Is a couple of people are starting to jump. So I was going to say,
Yeah.
feel free to jump as you need to, but don't hesitate. That info@galaxydigital.com and some of the other places to keep. But we'll keep hanging for a few more minutes. So Court, we can keep going, because
Yeah.
I'm good for a few more.
Yeah, absolutely.
One more question as far as things on my end from Linda. What ideas do you have for using social platforms to recruit specific cultural groups?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So there could be a lot, when we're talking about cultural groups, that could be a very diverse sort of, meaning there. There are some like demographic pieces of information on Pew Research, and you're trying to recruit for volunteers. So you really want to, I would say, like, do you have any members of particular groups that are already volunteers, and do they use social? And then ask them first through that volunteer survey. You could look at, these big demographic breakdowns on the Pew Research. Like, I've read some of that, but I kind of continue to find that I'm often surprised when I just talk to people about where they're at. And, it could be completely antithetical to what the research says. So I would say, like, Linda, if you have any members of that specific community already in your support base, I'd talk to them about where they may be spending time on social. Or if you serve any members of that community in your program, I'd maybe talk to them too.
We had some questions about the survey, Court, just to bear in mind for the follow-ups, like what kind of questions would you ask in the survey? And I think she's hitting on all the things. If you're finding out people's age, how they identify, what their preferred media platforms are, all of those things can be elements that think about what you're going to want to put into Excel and organize your survey results by. I need to know this to know whether or not I should use Facebook. I need to know this to know whether or not I need to recruit some advocacy groups to work within Facebook to reach a different demographic. So I think that piece of just thinking through what you're trying to figure out and then backtracking to the questions. I know Court's going to send a lot of material. This recording will come out and a bunch of other things, and we have it posted on our website as well. But as we go through these sort of pieces, start with the end in mind. What do you need to find out? Look at that. It's PEW, Pew Research, some of the material that Court's going to send. Think about what you're trying to figure out, and then weave your questions backwards so that when your survey goes out, you're gathering that information that you intend to sort by to make your decisions.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, adding a survey question, you could send out something that really is, do you spend time on social media? Yes or no? If so, what are the platforms you spend time on? And you could just name the top 3 platforms you're spending time on, or the places you're thinking about spending time on, or you can add all of them. And you can also leave a little box for other, maybe they're spending time on something that we haven't even heard has been invented yet. Does anyone remember MySpace?
I was about to say MySpace. I was like
love
MySpace, and then I moved
MySpace.
to Facebook and felt all fancy. And now you've shown me there's so much beyond where I've landed, and I need to learn more.
Yeah,
So,
there's new things being invented all the time. So, but there are some pretty big standouts. Facebook's still the most popular one worldwide. YouTube also is considered social. So, any other questions before we sign off for the day? I have 60 seconds. If not, I
This has
just
been
want to say thank
great.
you. Go
Yeah.
ahead and sign us off, Elizabeth. Do you?
Yeah, no, I was going to say this chat has been fantastic. I love the questions and the support that you all have for each other within it. So this next one, I think is coming out. We've got another one next month, and we may actually do a survey of our own that will send you a direction, because I think part of what we want to get from this group is what are the pieces you want to dig further into? What are the things that you're hearing about you want to learn more? I'm learning every time we put these together. I know, Court, maybe speak for yourself, but I feel like I'm getting deeper in knowledge every single time. And this is supposed to be something where we all just learn together. So do let us know if there's something you want to hear more about. Definitely want to hear that. But I thank you so much for your time today, and hope you guys have a great afternoon.
Yes.
Get
thank
Connected
you.
volunteer management software. I'm supposed to say that part. Too.
Yeah.
Get Connected volunteer management software. I do love what we do, but I love more so that we get to support everybody out there doing good, regardless of how they're doing it. So thanks so much for joining us. And thank you, Nate. You did great interrupting. Nicely done.
And as
I'll be here
always,
all week. Thank you.
reach out to us at any time if you have more questions about what it is that we do at Get Connected by Galaxy Digital. We do support volunteer managers every single day with our software. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you all attending, and thanks for your great questions. Do look for that recording and all of those bonus resources that I mentioned in this in the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Have a good one.